Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. This maxim serves as the defining thesis for the past 2 centuries of financial history. It is widely attributed to Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the patriarch of the greatest banking dynasty the world has ever known. While the provenance of the quote is debated, the economic reality it describes is irrefutable. He did not need to speak the words, he executed the strategy. For the better part of the 19th and 20th centuries, the trajectory of the Western world, its military conflicts, its industrial metamorphoses, and its colonial expansions was not merely authored by politicians and generals, it was underwritten by a single family. In the contemporary financial lexicon, we associate power with institutional behemoths like the Federal Reserve, BlackRock, or Vanguard, faceless entities governed by algorithmic trading and high-frequency data centers. Yet long before the digitization of capital, there existed the House of Rothschild. At their zenith, they functioned not merely as bankers, but as the supranational central bank for the European continent. They were the invisible hand capable of stabilizing a collapsing currency or asphyxiating the credit of a belligerent regime. They constructed the railway networks that stitched Europe together, capitalized the diamond mines that delineated the map of Africa, and arguably perfected the art of international arbitrage before the term had even entered the textbooks of political economy. To regard them simply as wealthy bankers is a reductionist error. The Rothschilds were the architects of the modern financial system. They innovated the very concept of the international bond market and established a private intelligence network that operated with greater velocity than any state apparatus. This narrative is a deconstruction of raw economics, the brilliant, ruthless, and technically complex strategies that allowed a family from a constrained background to become the creditors of kings. This is the story of how financial leverage conquered the world, and specifically how one family outmaneuvered the greatest military genius of the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte. To comprehend the ascent of the Rothschilds, one must first interrogate the economic environment that forged them. It was a world defined by rigid mercantilist barriers, where social mobility was calcified. The saga begins in the mid-18th century in the free city of Frankfurt. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born in 1744 into the Judengasse, a cramped walled enclave where residents were subjected to draconian curfews and punitive taxation. They were legally barred from owning land and excluded from prestigious craft guilds. These regulations served as a masterclass in the utility of liquid assets. Precluded from owning vast estates, he was forced to traffic in the one commodity that transcends physical walls, currency. Orphaned by age 12, Mayer apprenticed at the banking house of Wolf Jacob Oppenheim in Hanover, where he mastered the esoteric language of finance and the mechanics of bills of exchange, the protocol for moving credit between cities without the physical transport of bullion. More importantly, he deciphered the psychology of the European elite. He discerned that the fractious collection of princes and dukes possessed a peculiar obsession with prestige, specifically ancient numismatics. Coins from Rome and Byzantium functioned as status symbols of the era. Mayer realized that by establishing himself as a connoisseur of these artifacts, he could secure access to courtly circles otherwise hermetically sealed to him. Upon his return to Frankfurt at 19, he launched a rare coin dealership, producing meticulously cataloged brochures, an early innovation in direct marketing. The coins were the entry point, the financial services were the upsell. His primary target was Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse, who operated what was effectively a mercenary state, leasing his army to foreign powers like the British Empire. Wilhelm was not merely a prince, he was a massive institutional investor. Mayer Amschel spent years cultivating this relationship, eventually yielding the pivotal title of court factor in 1769. This granted him legal protections and exemptions from local taxes. However, Meyer recognized that reliance on a single patron was a fragile business model. To construct a resilient empire, he needed to diversify his exposure. His diversification strategy was found in his progeny. This marks the transition of the Rothschild enterprise from a local family business to a global sovereign franchise. Meyer Amschel had 5 sons: Amschel, Solomon, Nathan, Carl, and James. As they reached maturity, he deployed them across the strategic chessboard of Europe. He retained the eldest in Frankfurt, sent Solomon to Vienna, Carl to Naples, James to Paris, and Nathan, the most intellectually formidable, to London, the engine of global trade. This decentralized structure provided 3 distinct economic advantages. First, it optimized information velocity. In an era predating the telegraph, cross-border financial settlements were lethargic. The Rothschilds internalized this process. Nathan in London could issue credit, which James in Paris could settle immediately, functioning as an internal clearing system. Second, it enabled arbitrage. With agents in 5 markets, the family could identify price discrepancies instantaneously. Third, it provided political hedging. If France declared war on Austria, the Paris branch might suffer, but the London and Vienna branches would thrive on war financing. The ultimate stress test of this system was the Napoleonic Wars of 1803 to 1815. The conflict dismantled the established order. For traditional commerce, this was catastrophic, but for the Rothschilds, it presented an arbitrage opportunity of millennial proportions. By 1814, the British government was in a desperate predicament. The Duke of Wellington's army in Spain was insolvent, and troops were on the brink of mutiny because they lacked physical gold to pay for supplies. Nathan Rothschild mobilized the family network to aggregate gold bullion from London, Amsterdam, and Frankfurt. However, the French naval blockade made direct shipment impossible. Nathan executed the unthinkable. He routed the funds through France itself. His brother James, operating in Paris, persuaded the French Ministry of Finance that by importing gold, he was strengthening the French economy and bleeding Britain of its reserves. Once the gold entered the French banking system, James and his network of couriers clandestinely transported it south across the Pyrenees into Wellington's hands. The Rothschilds were effectively utilizing Napoleon's own financial infrastructure to fund the army destined to defeat him. In a single year, Nathan supplied enough specie to pay for over 200,000 soldiers. The narrative reaches its crescendo at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. While a persistent legend claims Nathan crashed the stock market to buy back shares cheaply, historical records reveal a truth far more impressive. The Rothschilds possessed a superior intelligence network. An agent arrived in London with news of Napoleon's defeat a full 24 to 48 hours before the official government dispatch. Nathan received this news first, but he faced a liquidity crisis because the family had been hoarding gold, betting on a protracted conflict. Peace meant the demand for gold would collapse. Nathan executed an immediate pivot. He recognized that while peace was bearish for gold, it was bullish for government debt. He liquidated his gold and poured the capital into British government bonds, or consols, while they were still at depressed wartime valuations. By 1817, he liquidated these for a profit of approximately 40%, transforming a potential bankruptcy into the fortune that would define the century. The cessation of hostilities left the Rothschilds as the undisputed masters of the continent's liquidity. Having profited from war, they understood that the preservation of their wealth now depended on peace. As holders of sovereign debt for almost every major European power, they became the ultimate stakeholders in geopolitical stability. This ushered in the era of Pax Rothschild. In 1818, they innovated the international bond market with the Prussian loan, a bond denominated in sterling but issued simultaneously in London, Frankfurt, Paris, and Vienna. This allowed capital to flow frictionlessly across borders. By 1825, their role as a shadow central bank became literal when the Bank of England itself depleted its gold reserves during a financial panic. Nathan Rothschild arranged a massive emergency shipment of gold from his brothers in France, effectively bailing out the British government overnight. Later, they pivoted into the Industrial Revolution, investing in the infrastructure of the future. In the 1830s, the Rothschilds financed the first major railways in Austria and France, perceiving the value of vertical integration. By controlling the rails, they controlled the flow of physical commerce. Their influence extended to the United States and global strategic assets, such as the 1875 purchase of the Suez Canal shares for the British government. Lionel de Rothschild provided the £4 million needed for the transaction on the spot, ensuring the British Empire secured the canal when Parliament could not act quickly enough. By the 20th century, the Rothschilds